I'm not a baby, I'm a man. I am an anchor man. I'm a man who discovered the wheel and built the Eiffel Tower out of metal and brawn. That's what kind of man I am.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, you know what? I hate it when I misstate things. I misstated something yesterday. I got to correct for the record.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we were talking about Somalia, and I said Somalia was near the equator in Africa.
Yeah?
And it sort of bothered me because I pulled up a map, and I guess I didn't get it too far wrong because the interesting part of that is that the equator goes through the center of Somalia. It's not near the equator. Somalia, part of Somalia is in the northern hemisphere, part of Somalia is in the southern hemisphere. And you know what the other little tidbit of information, my geography tidbit is?
No, I don't have any idea.
Somalia is the farthest east point of the continent of Africa because it sticks out.
Wow, look at geography B champion Brad Hildebrand.
It sticks out on the east side of the continent of Africa. So that's the story. And
hey, if we have, let me interrupt, Brad.
Yeah.
If we have, while we're talking about corrections, sometimes there would be people who would look at, I don't know, before I massaged the Apple podcast website, you know, where you can subscribe to the Brad and John show. When stuff would be posted up there in a low effort kind of way, it would just have an automatic number of how many segments we've done. Oh, we've done 1,000 segments. Nobody in their right mind listens to a radio show and thinks, oh, yeah, they've done 1,300 segments. People talk about episodes. So with that out of the way, Brad, today is our 500th episode.
500 episode, and they said it wouldn't last.
Yeah, and we
John.
don't do segments, so we're not going to split hairs and get buried in inane, idiotic talk. We've done 500 episodes, Brad.
The interesting thing about that is we've done the show for over 2 years now, and consider the fact you got to take off weekends and days when I've been in the hospital and days when John's been on vacation because Brad never takes vacation. So, yeah, I guess it
You're
would be
such a martyr, Brad. Way to go. I wonder if that's why you're crippled all the time and you're sick. Go ahead.
That is John Combest. You spell his name Combest. You need that spelling because when you type in John, John, Combest, Combest.com, and that's COM, you get his website, which he's put together every single year. What, 24 years? I lose track. 24 years now?
Yeah, it's something like that. We don't brag about it, Brad. We put our head down and we just do the work.
That's what she said. Every single day for
Brad,
the past 20
sloppy top talk.
For the past 24 years, John Combest puts this website together. Now, to some people, it may be so overkill because sometimes he has like 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 dozen stories on his website. But what we do is we are kind, and for those people who are ADHD, and I don't know anybody like that, we bring in this guy. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what's your job?
We're on our way to the number one.
And we start off with?
In third place.
A prolific elected official in our broadcast area. That's right. The Westplex has sponsored a bunch of legislation. In fact, I believe among all legislators, he's sponsored more legislation, pre-filed more legislation than anyone, and he's not done yet. That's State Senator Nick Schroer. Nick Schroer followed the model of, Schroer's a big Cardinal fan, but he followed the model of Ernie Banks. He said, let's play 2. He had 2 big media interviews this week, and the second one was yesterday with Scott Fawn. This week in Missouri politics, Scott does an F-150 campaign update. Now, usually he does that right before the primary or right before the general. But, Brad, the campaign's already going, and people are already getting ready for the legislative session. I'll cut to the chase. Scott and Nick talked about a gamut of legislation that had been pre-filed by Senator Schroer, including legislation that talks about property taxes, income tax, all sorts of things. But in the conversation with Scott, I want to focus on the fact that Nick talked about school security and school resource officers. And Brad, I believe you have talked previously about the idea of the hurdles of someone who might be an expert in their field being able to teach in school. And Nick's point was someone who has experience in, let's say, firearms, maybe a military veteran, maybe a law enforcement officer, if they want to be able to serve their community by serving as a school resource officer, they shouldn't have to jump through a bunch of red tape to do it. We should make it easier for those folks to be able to help protect their community and their schools. So Nick went into detail on that legislation there. PK has a series called Kids or Criminals, and it's focused on juvenile youth. Some would call them juvenile delinquents, and what the state, the city, county law enforcement can and should do to hold these youngsters accountable and really to get them the help that they need to not lead a life of crime. So Nick was talking about the fact that if a young person escapes from a juvenile detention facility, the reporter asked, Lauren Traeger asked Nick, hey, should the public be notified about this? And Schroer said, absolutely. Schroer said there's a way that we can do it without exposing the kids, previous arrest history, whatever. But in the interest of public safety, we should let people know when a youth escapes from a detention facility. Lauren Traeger also focused on something you and I discussed within the last few months, which is there's a point system now for people who are criminals. And should the point system be what dictates if they're just free to walk away? Or should we look at each crime individually? I believe that's the context of the discussion, Brad. So, pardon my long-windedness there, but Nick Schroer, two insightful interviews this week, KSDK and This Week in Missouri Politics. You will find both links up today at johncombest.com.
I watched part of the F-150 interview. And,
Brad, and were they in a basement?
No, they were in his truck. They were in his that's why he's called it the F-150 tour. And who was that in the back seat? I didn't catch that. Who was that in the back seat?
Didn't you really watch this? I thought you were going to make some sort of a Bernard Dubray anecdote.
No.
Oh, that's Erin Schrimpf. She's a lobbyist in Jefferson City.
Okay, and I thought it was really interesting. First off, Scott Fawn does a great job. And you know what? I called him when you were talking there just a minute ago. And I called him and I said, hey, Scott, John's on the air right now complimenting you. I mean, can you give him back a little bit of compliment? And so Scott, we're on the air right now. What do you think about John again?
Missouri Times, chilling in the heat, Scott Fawn on the beat, feeling so complete. From the cities to small towns, we keep it real.
Did you know that Scott could rap? Did you know that, John?
I know. That is one of, unless I'm mistaken, that is one of your first AI songs that you did for this show, Brad.
Okay, and in addition to that, it was interesting because part of the interview, I don't know if you watched this part or not, where Ricky Schroer actually had his little DVD player and he was playing some of his greatest clips from his TV show that he was in, and Scott was like sort of enamored in that. So it was an interesting interview.
Two silver spoons together. How disrespectful of you to refer to a state senator as a 1980s legend, but maybe you're just paying homage, Brad.
Homage is it homage or homage? Which one is it? Which one?
It's homage.
Homage.
I think I think it's like Caribbean, where it depends on the context of the sentence. Like you would never say Pirates of the Caribbean, you'd say Pirates of the Caribbean. But if you say where are you going on vacation, you'd say, oh, yeah, it was a Caribbean cruise.
And just like when I go for Friday nights, I don't go to Sauget, I go to Sauget. That's where I go. Yeah, right?
Yes. Hey, yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about Bellefontaine Road. Yes. I'll tell you what's not on Bellefontaine Road, the subject of story number 2.
Must be number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Now, here's yet another topic that Brad Hildebrand knows just a little bit about. A headline from Kelsey Landis of the Post-Dispatch. Kelsey generally handles St. Louis County government topics. A little-known committee is steering the $50 million St. Louis area police training center. Now, the emphasis in that headline that Kelsey's trying to get us to put our eyes and our attention on is the idea of a little-known committee. Is this group operating in the shadows? Is this one of those insider groups? Well, Kelsey explores the fact that earlier this year, in August, the state of Missouri announced $50 million for this new state-of-the-art, everything now is state-of-the-art training facility for local law enforcement. Not just St. Louis County, not just St. Charles County, but also Franklin County is involved. Jefferson County is involved. But there's a little bit of a sticky thing here. The group got together recently and they failed to call it a public meeting. They got together in private. They didn't tell people they were getting together. They didn't put out a public notice that said, hey, we're going to get together at good old Bob Brinkman's house and have a little powwow. So now people who were interested in transparency and public records and the Sunshine Law say, wait a minute, guys, when you guys get together to talk about spending $50 million of taxpayer money, you got to put out a notice. You can't just get everybody together in a room and say, okay, who's going to get the construction contract? Who's going to lay the concrete here? So, Brad, if you go to this piece by Kelsey Landis today, you'll see her lay out a little bit of background about Bob Brinkman. He's the founder of Chesterfield-based Brinkman Constructors. Brad, you probably know more about him than I do. The article does note that he's a big contributor to Mike Kehoe. So that's where actually I know his name from, is seeing it on campaign reports. The commission, I'll just touch on the commission real quickly, and then we can talk about this. The commission appointed James Harden of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, Major Andy Sides of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, and Colonel Norman Mann of the St. Louis County Police Department to the committee. So this is a group that's going to get together. They're going to have little subcommittees, and they're going to decide, things like, hey, what union gets to actually build this? Who's going to actually get the money for the concrete, and who's going to get the highfalutin drone training equipment? I'm making that up. But you see what I'm saying, Brad. And so this piece from Kelsey includes quotes from a guy named Dave Roland, who's known as being a big First Amendment guy, a big sunshine guy, who's like, hey, guys, you got to put this stuff out for public notice before you guys sit down and talk about this stuff. And for their part, Brad, I should say that the group says it was an oversight. We should have done it properly, and we need to make sure that it's done properly. So maybe we just give them a mulligan, Brad. Their first meeting can be in private, and then after that, you better let us see what you're doing.
Two things there, John. Can I make two comments?
Yeah, please do.
First off, that's exactly how I won my lawsuit when the farmers, a.k.a. the Village of Three Creeks, a.k.a. the Dutzel Bottom Levee District, sued me. They have these meetings, but they didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they were there talking about it, but you have to, if they're not really public, that violates the letter and the spirit of the law.
You have to give public notice, which means you have to put it in like the paper, stuff like that. Okay, second thing is, I have a question about this, and in the C-block, I would like to call Mike Elam and see if we can get him on the air, because I went to the grand opening of this police training place up in O'Fallon, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, which one, and there's been some infighting over this. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't think it's the same facility, though, right?
No,
I think it's two different projects, isn't it?
Yes, but that's, I don't quite understand it. And if you can, if you'll indulge me, Mike knows the whole story. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah, have you considered texting him first to let him know you will be calling?
No, because I want to call him when he's in the shower, and that way I can say,
yeah, you definitely want to call him when he's like, oh God, Brad's trying to sell me ads again.
No, I don't. See, I want to call him when he's in the shower, because that way he can put in his Facebook page, well, Brad called me again, and I can put on my Facebook page, John, Mike Elam's coming at me again. He's coming after me. So those are my two. Okay, we ready for number one?
Yeah, give it to us, Brad.
The number one.
Just last week, we had a terrific conversation on the air. I should say you had a terrific conversation on the air with Jason Law, running for St. Charles County Executive. And you asked him about a hot topic, which was, what about all these apartments going up in St. Charles County? And what about rental homes, too? That's been a hot topic as well. Well, in the vein of hot topics, Brad, you always have your finger you have your finger in a lot of places from what I hear, but you have your finger on the pulse. There's a piece of legislation that has been filed in the legislature that has to do with rentals. This piece is brought to us by Steph Kukuljan of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She writes, a St. Louis state legislator is seeking to rein in corporate ownership of single-family homes and what could be among the first regulations for absentee landlords in Missouri. This guy's name is Marty Joe Murray. He's a guy from St. Louis. He's a Democrat in St. Louis. He pre-filed legislation that would prohibit, quote, hedge funds, private equity firms, real estate investment firms, corporations, and real estate asset management firms valued at more than $100 million from owning more than 50 residential properties in the United States. So, Brad, I'll stop the preamble here and we can just discuss this. The unique thing about this issue is that I have seen both right-wing people I know, I would call them acquaintances, and left-wing people I know that I would call acquaintances, post about this on social media in the last 18 to 24 months. There was a popular TikTok trend going along that would show, can you believe the price of homes is terrible because BlackRock and these other hedge funds are buying up all this property? And it seemed to be something on the social medias that united the right and left. Now, we all know that corporations are evil. Companies shouldn't be able to buy and sell assets at a whim. They shouldn't be able to make money, and that big hedge funds are always bad. What I love about this legislation, I'm being sarcastic, what I love about it is that management firms valued at more than $100 million can't own more than 50 residential properties. So to me, if I'm at BlackRock or one of their 100 subsidiaries, I laugh at this and I say, okay, then we're going to keep our assets under management at 99.9 million, and we're going to buy 49 residential properties in Missouri. This won't become law, and this won't ever be a thing. But it does unite the right and the left. And Brad, don't you think it's terrible that big companies are buying real estate?
I do have a problem with that, John. I really do. I mean, we talked about this not too long ago, that they're playing games. One of the things they do is they go in and buy, like in a subdivision, they'll buy 3 or 4 houses, and then they will sell those houses to one of their subsidiaries that you just talked about.
Isn't that great? Isn't that capitalism?
Well, for an inflated price, and then the comps go up, and then they turn around and sell all their houses and make a huge profit. But see,
if it's inflated, who decides? Who decides what the price, Brett? That's the market, right? Does the government come in and say what the price is?
John, don't get me going in this. I think this whole thing...
I know. I mean, I understand that you don't like people and big companies that make money.
No, that's not at all. I say the whole real estate thing's a scam. And perfect example. I've talked about this before. This is a Dedham Tops thing. Okay, when the real estate market was hot, all the real estate agents were crowing about the fact that we listed this house for $500,000 and we had 23 bids over asking price. Well, once again, the real estate agents always brag about the fact that they're so good at pricing homes. Aren't they sort of shooting themselves in the foot by bragging about that? If you're so good at pricing the homes, then instead of selling listing it for $500,000 and you got all these overbids on it, why didn't you list it for $600,000? And just like all my real estate friends, they roll my eyes and I say, you know what? If I were you, I would take every house that was like a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house, or even $100,000 house, listed for $1 million. And they go, "What? Why would we do that?"
Because if you're so good at, your point is that they're so good at it, then people will pay for it.
No. The idea being is that once again, if you go to the store, it's the human psychology of having sale prices. If you list it for, let's say if it's $300,000 house, you list it for $1 million, and then you put a sign and say, "We dropped this price of the house by 50%. It's only $500,000.
It's the psychology of it.
And people go, "Oh my God, it's half price."
What gives me, I'm sorry to change the subject back to the original topic and something substantive, Brad. But originally the legislation had been introduced by Senator Rick Brattin, a Republican across the state, which to me gives it a little bit more credibility to see that somebody like Rick Brattin is sponsoring it. Now, I will say we can firmly put Rick Brattin on the right side of the political spectrum. This Marty Joe guy, he's a member of the super minority. I don't really know much about him, but you would probably put him on the left side of the spectrum. And I think that Rick Brattin's arguments were probably pretty similar to what Marty Joe Murray said, which is, why are the BlackRocks of the world able to make so much money doing this?
Well, because they got money. I mean, you make fun of me. I do listen to NPR quite a bit, okay? And one of the programs, they had a very interesting show about this exact same thing. And they talked about the fact, they chronicled this woman that had her, mother and father were in this house and they died, and she tried to buy the house, but she couldn't come up with the money. She couldn't get financed, and she moved into the house anyway. She was actually living in the house. She sold her house. She's living in the house trying to take care of her mother and father. They died. Then essentially the house had to be sold. the house was sold, and the guy who I find fascinating, if you pull out some currency, because when I sign my name, I do it I don't have cursive, I write letters, BRAD, that's my signature, okay? If you pull out your some of your money, it has Steve Mnuchin on there, and he has his name spelled out on some of the currency when he was the Secretary of Treasury. His company bought the house and essentially turned around and rented it to her at like 3 times the going rental rate.
Yeah, that's in this article too. Isn't that brilliant? So if she doesn't like it, she can move, right, Brad? Is she free to move if she doesn't like the price?
John, you and I will always have this. We will,
because you take the position of, it's such a shame. Why is people making money? I don't understand. In my day, people went out there and they ate pork and beans. And did I ever tell you about Herb Keller being out on the tarmac? See, in my day, things were better. You know what, lady? If you don't like it, pack up all your stuff and your parents' stupid little doilies and knickknacks and move to a different rental facility. You don't want to pay the price, move to a slummy part of town. Save your sob story for NPR and a bunch of idiot simps that are going to get on the radio and say, John, it's just not fair.
John and I have this back and forth. John's a big corporate guy because he used to work. It was at the time Monsanto. Weren't they like Fortune 50? Weren't they that big? Were they Fortune?
It was something like that. Sure.
Okay, and I'm a little guy. I'm forever the guy that's championing the small business
Brad.
guy.
Brad has been. I'm going to interrupt you, Brad, because we're tired of this rant. You've been diagnosed by a therapist as having chronic underdogism. You root for the Washington Generals against the Harlem Globetrotters.
I always do.
You think Ray Hartman has a chance to win, and you think Randy Raley might someday get to Congress.
No, but there's a new analogy. I root for the firefighters against the Savannah Bananas. That's who I root for. I don't.
Oh, there we go. I do too, Brad. You and I are united in that regard.
I don't want those nasty Savannah Banana guys to win again. Okay, are we ready for the B block, which is coming up?
Yeah, I want to hear your top 3 in B block.